All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be looking at lesson 4.2 today. So let's go ahead and jump to the website again. Math 7 textbook here. Scroll down. We're talking about inequalities. Now, the great thing about inequalities is it's just a natural transition from what we did in chapter 3 when we were solving equations. We're going to solve the inequalities and talk about our quick graphs real quick. And if you remember, we really got proficient with the graphing. It was really just the solving, especially with the negatives, that we got to be careful of. All right, so 4.2, just quick addition, subtraction. Going to scroll through some notes, do some practice problems on your own with you. The great news about your assignments this week is they're all the odd problems, so you can check your answers at the back if you have your textbook. Remember, if not, you scroll down where it is. I don't know if my computer's blocking it. There we go. Selected answers, remember? Beautiful. All right, so 4.2, the properties are pretty much the exact same thing. If you see the x plus 2, you're going to use subtract 2. Again, the inverse operations. The key thing is the actual way that we are writing our inequality. And I'm going to give you a small hint if the problem doesn't look the best, and I'll remind you what that looks like. And then, of course, if it says x subtract 3, we would use add 3 on both sides in order to keep it balanced and solve for your equation last week, inequality this week. All right, so I would suggest that example 1 is formatted really well. I like having the variable on the left-hand side. We'll talk more about that. If you notice, they simply added 5 on both sides, being careful with your integers. So they get x is less than 2. Remember, left hand is less than, left hand is less than. There we go. Left hand is less than, just like I did inside the classroom. Now, about your graphs. Now, if you remember, we don't have to make a huge number line like this. When I do the on your own, I'm going to give you a quick shortcut one that we've talked about before. You need to remember if it's an open or closed dot, which way your arrow is going. And again, that's just a really quick sketch, especially since we're in our review mode right now. All right, so we'll come back to some of those examples in a bit. Scrolling down here, I'm going to suggest don't start the problem when it looks like this. I'm going to give you some hints. We're going to go ahead and switch things around. Just like when we switched seats, you were the exact same student. Maybe you actually paid attention a little bit more, though, less talking, but you're still the same person. So in other words, when I switch sides around for my inequality, it's still the exact same inequality, which means you're still going to do the same skills to solve it, whether it's add or subtract. And then again, quick graph from there. So we got some on your own. We're not going to stress too much about the real-life application problems. We're just going to work on some basic skills. And then your assignment for this day is 3 through 19 odd. Number 19, just be careful because, again, it is that error analysis, which is a great way to understand if you truly know what the problem is asking you to do. All right, so let's jump to our problems really quick. So lesson 4.2, on your own. Let's see if my pen tablet is working. Very nice, it is. So on number 1, it is structured really well. Y subtract 6. So all I have to do is say, hey, I'm going to add 6 on both sides. Then I'm going to go ahead and say that my inequality y is greater than, because it's not left hand less than, negative 7 plus 6, again, different signs, so I'm going to take the difference, which gives me a 1. Then I look at the absolute value ideas for my sign, and of course it is negative 1. Looks good here. There is no equal part like there is on number 2, so therefore this would be an open dot on your graph. And this is all I really want, is just a really rough sketch, again, practicing. We're going to go and put the important number in the center, negative 1. I'm going to go put the arrows on both sides. Think about the number on the left and right. So it's really a 0 here, right? And this is a negative 2. And I really think that's good enough just for right now because we're just practicing this really quick. We already said that it's an open dot on negative 1, so go to make your open dot. And which way is the arrow going? Now remember, we have 2 ways to think about this. The one is actually thinking about the numbers. So what numbers are greater than negative 1? Well, you got your 2 choices. Is negative 2 or 0 greater than negative 1? And hopefully remember. The trick, and remember, the trick only works if the variable is on the left side, like I tried teaching you. The trick, remember, is, hey, it's pointing to the right, so make it go to the right. And if you have your highlighter, what we did previously was we just kind of did a quick highlighter that direction. Because again, those are the positives, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10, 100, and so on. And those are definitely greater than negative 1. All right, beautiful sketch. Moving on. Number 2. Structure looks really good as well. Variables on the left side like I want. Let's see. It says subtract 3.8. So I'm going to go ahead and add 3.8 on both sides. And I'm going to try and get those lined up there. So I'm going to have b is less than or equal to. And then I'm just going to go ahead and do quick addition. 1.7 and 3.8 gives me a 15 with a decimal point. 5.5. So again, when it's a decimal, you could still do the integers next to it. So for example, if I say my important number is 5.5, we're going to think about one number smaller or less than and one number greater than. So 5.5 is obviously 6 is greater and 5 is less. So looking at my inequality, I have the equal part, therefore it is a quick closed dot. Then, again, the trick or the values, what numbers are less than or equal to 5.5, and obviously that is 5, and so on. Now, the reason we have to have a closed dot is because it actually includes the 5.5. It's not just getting really close to 5.5, but it's equal to 5.5. So grab your highlighter, and of course, it's everything to the left. And again, quick graph. All right, number 3, this is what I wanted us to focus on. I'm going to suggest that I don't like this format here. Let me see if I can zoom in. It's not the clearest quality. So, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it as if you would see it a little bit better. So let's see, it says -1/2 is greater. I'm going to make it z with a line so it doesn't look like my 2. Subtract 1/4. All right, so imagine this instead. That's the original problem. All right, so what I'm going to say again is I don't like it presented this way, and most 8th grade and beyond teachers don't either. So what we're going to do is switch sides. Now again, it's imagine like you are switching sides in the classroom. When we were there, you're still the same person. So z subtract 1/4 just goes on the left. My -1/2 goes on the right. Now, this is the part where some students get a little bit confused, is if you switch sides, the inequality has to behave normally. So they really don't want us to bring this up anymore, but it really helps for students. Again, that whole crocodile mentality. It wants to eat the -1/2. So in other words, it is open towards the -1/2, so I'm going to keep it towards the -1/2. So now it is presented very similar to problem 1 and 2. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1/4 to both sides. Unfortunately, I cannot actually do that right now. Remember, we practiced some fractions as well. So I need to go ahead and remember that in order to add or subtract fractions, I need a common denominator. So an LCD for 2 and 4 is obviously a 4. So I really only have to change the top one. In order to get a 4, my fraction needs to multiply by some 2's. 2 times 2 is 4. So -1 times 2 is -2. So I really have -2/4 and +1/4. It is still going to be a 4th. I'm going to take the difference, which is a 1. And looking at the signs, I'm going to take the negative sign. All right, so quick graph. The important number goes in the center, -1/4. Number here, number there. Now, hopefully you can remember -1/4 is actually pretty close to 0. And then -1. So we got a quick open dot. And which way is the arrow going to go for the understanding? It says less than -1/4, less than goes to the left. That's what some students try to remember, less than left hand. So I can change the highlighting color to the left. Beautiful. All right, so what I notice here is every single problem required addition to solve. So let's see if the next section, yep. It's only that other one. So I'm actually going to change the problems just to make it a little bit consistent with what you're going to do on your actual practice. So let's change this to w plus 7, d subtract, or d plus 10, and that one looks good there. Okay. Since we did a bunch of subtraction, or sorry, addition to solve, we're going to do a bunch of subtraction to solve now. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 7 because I noticed the format looked really good. I'm going to go ahead and continue to work there. So w is less than or equal to, same signs, which means I'm going to add them together, keep the sign. All right, quick graph. Negative 17 in the center. Hopefully you're noticing that it does have the equal part, which means it will be a closed dot. Now this is where some students get confused on their graph. Remember, for negatives it's kind of backwards. Negative 18, negative 17, negative 16. All right, open dot on, closed dot on negative 17. And then graph less than negative 17 or to the left. Very nice. All right, moving on to 5. Ooh, I don't like 5 because, again, I want to go ahead and have d plus 10 on the left side. And then negative 7.5 on the right side. And if you notice, it is wanting to get the negative 7.5. Has the equal part, another closed dot. Beautiful. All right, let's subtract 10. Hey, this is almost the same problem as the previous one. So I have our variable d is less than or equal to, both negative. I'm going to add it, gives me 17.5, keeps the negative sign, negative 17.5. I think we're good to skip the graph on this one because it's so close to the other one. Just remember the negative 17.5 is going to be in between negative 18 and negative 17. All right, last one here, number 6. I'm going to subtract 3/4 on both sides. Subtract 3/4 on both sides. So this is going to give me x is greater than, over here, going to have to clean up a little bit. So 1 1/2, remember that's really 3/2. Now I need an LCD. So again, same denominator of 4. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6. So I have 6/4 subtract 3/4. If you need to, you can bring it over here. And that's just going to give me a 3/4. Very nice. All right, quick graph. 3/4 goes in the center. Remember, 3/4 is like 3/4, so you have $1 here, and then you're so sad when you have $0 over here. Open dot, no equal part, open dot, and again, the trick, it's pointing to the right, or 1 is greater than 3/4. So let's go ahead and make our arrow go this direction, to the right. All right, beautiful. Do the best that you can. Remember, solving equations, solving inequalities, very, very similar. Do the best that you can. Submit any questions. Continue to be awesome. We've got a few more weeks.